God's justice is something to celebrate. When God is bringing his judgment to this world, he's setting things straight. We read it and think about it often in this negative sense, but it is a beautiful thing where God is looking at those who are lost and broken and being hurt and oppressed, and God is standing up for them in order to lift them up. It is this moment where God is taking the oppressed and he is exalting them. He's lifting them up. He's raising them up, helping them, making sure that they can be cared for. And those who are exalted, who are proud, are being humbled. And they are being brought to the same level where God is evening the playing field, making sure that we're all cared for, fed, loved, all these things. You see, when the prophets come, one of the main themes they bring with them when they start talking to the nations is you're being unjust. You're being oppressors, not blessers. And this is something that is a common theme and a common downfall of Israel. God blesses Israel, he empowers Israel, he provides for Israel so that they can be this powerhouse of blessing to the nations around them. They can bring peace and be an example to everyone else of God's goodness. But instead they become a curse. And not only do they become a curse to themselves, they become a curse to the nations around them and to God. And so they take in these other gods and they do their own thing, and they build themselves up to be this rich and powerful and oppressing nation, and God is telling them to feed the hungry, and instead they're cursing them, to care for the widowed, and instead they're being forgotten. They're not gaining any status or care. Instead what's happening is they're being thrown out of their cities to basically starve to death. God calls Israel to look out at their neighbors and to bless them. But instead, they become oppressors. And so God's justice corrects this. This is a good thing. It's necessary. And so, in the book of Isaiah, there's this little tidbit that I just absolutely love. And it's Isaiah 3:10 and 11. It says, "Tell the righteous it will be well with them, for they will enjoy the fruits of their deeds. Woe to the wicked, disasters upon them. They will be paid back for what their hands have done." You see, it's not that your salvation comes through your deeds, but what you do matters. How we treat people matters. When we are filled with the Spirit, God's Spirit will soften our hearts, and we will deal with the people's issues that are in our lives around us. The practical ways we can get involved, we will get involved. God will grow our hearts, and he will use our skills, and he will put us to work in good ways, and we will become a carrier of God's blessing. We will be not oppressors, but we will be blessers. But for those who take that blessing and use it for ourselves, God uses a warning against them and says, you will see your kingdom that you build around yourself crumble. And if not you, your children. You cannot set up your family for disaster. Rather, look at the lives of the people around you and just in a practical way, care for those in any way you can. And that's the gospel. That is this warning of God's justice, is that it's a good thing. It's a blessing. And so let us look at God's judgment in the light of the beauty of what it actually is, rather than in fear of it being an oppressive thing.